In terms of foreign direct investment, what has been the impact of the ministry?
We've had a lot more interest shown in the mining sector in Nigeria, both in terms of concrete exploration activities as well as even associated mining activities like leasing of equipment. There's been an intense increase in the activities, which is, in fact, in direct contradiction to the recession that Nigeria is experiencing.
You remember you expressed some optimism in which some people felt was a kind of unrestrained optimism about the potential of the mining sector. 2 years after now, would you say you've delivered on your promise?
Well, that optimism was not misplaced. If you check the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics figures, you will know that mining and maybe agriculture are the only two sectors that have actually grown at a time that the economy is experiencing a lot of challenges. But we can still do a lot more than we've done. What we've put in place are the structures that would make mining grow at an exponential rate. And once those structures are there, it's easier to begin to notice. We're doing a lot to retrieve and solve the problem of Alscon, the aluminium smelter plant in Ikotabasi, dealing with the issues relating to Ajaokuta Steel plant.
We understand that the federal government plans to generate 30% of its total power supply to the country from the coal-to-power project. Do you think this is feasible?
How are we keen into the mandate? Well, in a number of ways. We have the resources, the mineral resources relating to that are here. Some we have conceded to the Bureau of Public Enterprises, to concession, to willing investors. And almost on a weekly basis, people approach us here to do that. South African mining corporations, Polish mining corporations, you name them.
There are strong indications that the World Bank may not just be financing the coal-to-power project. Is this a setback?
How can that be a setback? Nigeria is a sovereign state, for goodness sake. When I read stories like this, I just shudder. Does Nigeria exist only on the sufferance of the World Bank?
But this is a capital-intensive project.
It is a capital-intensive project. There are people, there are investors that know the value of gaining access to our coal mines and what they could do to those coal mines in terms of coal-to-power generation. Once you are not interested in just a quick fix, if you are in it for the long term, you know the benefits that will come from it. So not having World Bank funding is not going to dissuade us. I might add that if we're so keen on international funding for it, the African Development Bank has expressed an interest to support our coal-to-power initiative. So I don't see that as a setback at all. In fact, it's a fillip to push us to look for more creative ways and look for more serious-minded investors to come into the sector. And that's what we're doing.
What incentives are you creating?
In fact, a number of local investors are already generating power from coal. This is what people don't particularly pay attention to. I can confirm to you today that Dangote cement factory in Obajano is generating 100 megawatts from coal. And this is a recent development. Lafarge is generating almost a similar amount from coal. Ashaka Sem is also developing coal-to-power initiatives. That's just on a local scale. If you then add those who want to come in to do this on a much bigger scale, I don't see any reason why it's not possible to meet that target that the Ministry of Power has set for coal-to-power generation.
Let's come to the issue of the Ajaokuta Steel Company. Many people feel that's a tragic, never-ending fairy tale. What is the situation now?
The status of Ajaokuta Steel Company is that we are getting it back. It is a federal government of Nigeria's owned company. Let's start with that. Nigeria decided to concession it out to a private investor. That didn't work out well. A government came, that government revoked the concession. We ended up in the London Court of International Arbitration. We have now resolved that in mediation. What we're doing currently are post-mediation activities, in the sense that we agreed to give the National Iron Mining Company back to the concessionaire, whilst taking the Ajaokuta Steel plant back into the federal government coffers with a view to reconcessioning it. So that's where we are currently.
Some people feel the Ajaokuta Steel Company has been an institutional conduit to siphon money from the coffers of the federal government.
Well, it might have been. I don't know. I have no evidence to suggest that it's a conduit, but Nigeria has expended a lot of money. Not less than $5 billion had been expended on that particular facility. And I think it's a shame that we have not put it to use. So we as a government, President Buhari made that clear on the campaign trail that we will put Ajaokuta to use.
Let's look at the 2007 Mining Act. Do you think there are some necessary areas for amendments?
Well, first and foremost, let me say that the Mining Act is a good law. I've always said that. But with every law, you, on the basis of experience, discover gaps that need to be corrected. And that's precisely what has happened.
Some people are of the opinion that the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development may continue to grope in the dark if it doesn't deal with the unbridled influence of the cabals in the sector.
Well, no cabal calls the shots here in the mining sector. We encourage all players. Yes, there are big players in this sector, and we want the big players to thrive. At the same time, we don't want the big players to thrive at the detriment of the small-scale players that are working hard to grow. It's a complementary relationship. It's not a conflictual one.
Before we wind down this conversation now, how do you see the future of the mining sector in line with job creation, diversification of the economy, and stimulating economic growth?
Mining depends on predictability and credibility. Mining will not thrive if we do not have resources put into mining. So, one, we must ensure that we enforce the laws that I already said are good laws. Because part of the problem we've had is lack of enforcement. You see me going around Nigeria tackling illegal miners. It's to send a strong signal, but I'm not just doing it on my own. I've also set up a machinery. For the first time in 30 years, the mines police is back.
And that's it on this episode of Question Time. What's your take on the federal government's plan to revamp Ajaokuta Steel Company? Send us a comment on our various social media platforms showing on your screen. Join us next week for a fresh episode of the show on Channels Television. Many thanks for watching. I'm Benga Ashuru. Bye for now.